all to ourselves. How is it going, boys and girls? Welcome back to Key West Waterman. My name is Aaron Young. You know Will, you've met Justin. I had a, long story short, had a 6-hour charter this morning. Weather's spectacular. We don't get a lot of days like this time of year. So after my charter, I called the boys and figured we'd run out and see if we could find a wahoo to eat before the season comes to an end. It's end of March. They tend to slow down this time of year. But we got a report yesterday that a buddy of ours saw a few, so we're gonna give it a look. Me and Justin will be floating. Will's gonna be on the helm. Let's go take a peek. All right, so for those of you who aren't familiar with wahoo spearfishing or blue water in general, the fish are typically bigger and much stronger, so we use these big long lines and these buoys. And we clip off to these big giant guns. That way, when you shoot the fish, it fights the buoy and it doesn't fight you. So you clip off to here. Maybe I'll go over some rigging videos on this. I've actually had a couple requests. Clips off here, I shoot, everything breaks away except for the gun, and the fish fights on this line and that buoy, and I chase it. That's how it's supposed to work. We just need a fish to swim by. Justin already started with the excuses. He said he had an earache and his tummy hurt, I think. If he misses one, that's why. You can't hear me. Ah!
It's been a while since I've done it that far. Can I get a throw flasher actually, Will?
See you in the water. Welcome back underwater, everybody. This afternoon was just incredible. Just unreal conditions. I don't know, over 100 foot of viz, kind of hard to tell. And a bunch of bait came in right away. We've got some rainbow runners. There's some bonitas and yellowtails off in the distance. And even some sharks, which a lot of people worry about sharks, but sharks kind of are a good sign because it means there's life and a food source in the area. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to see them.
There's life all over the place.
Those rainbow runners actually are delicious and edible, just not what we were looking for. And it looks way too good not to see some. So here's a little trick. I haven't showed this before. You kind of cup your hand and slam it on the surface of the water. You could hear, if you listen carefully and play that back, you'll hear the speaker kind of make a muffled sound. It actually creates like a drum noise, and it doesn't work every time, but it can kind of scare the sharks off if they're being a little frisky. Doesn't work every time. So first drift, we had no sightings. It seemed that the majority of the life was at the beginning of the drift, so we're gonna go a little further up current. I'll show you what we're working here. It's kind of a gradual roll. Goes down to 130, up to 120. Tends to hold a decent amount of bait, so I'm gonna get on the top of that, a little farther up current, and give it another look. This is our second drift. Like I said, we just set up farther up current so we had more time in the area where there was bait. And we sat there and floated and floated, and we floated for probably 45 minutes. I mean, maybe 30 minutes. And the current was moving pretty good, so we went at least a mile. And it was funny because Justin turned at me and he goes, "We should probably reset. I can't believe we haven't seen anything yet." And I promise you it was not 30 seconds. We turn around and there's wahoo behind us. And they come in on Justin's side first, and they're kind of passing him. He does have a shot. They were just a lot of smaller fish. And because they're kind of already passing us, you see I throw that flasher way up in front of where they're going. You don't want to throw it at them. You want to throw it in the direction that they're traveling. And this fish comes and kind of swims vertically and turns towards it and gives me a good enough shot, and I let it rip. And so the fish doesn't take off like a wahoo normally would, and to me, that means that I probably spined it. And what spined it means is I broke its spinal cord. And a lot of times it'll slow the shaft down quite a bit when you do that. So I don't want to pull really hard right away. I want to make sure I can see that slip tip on the other side of the fish. But I did see it, so then I start to pull the fish in.
They're coming back. They're coming back.
And these fish, they did hang out for a second. But like I said, I shot the biggest one in the school. It's late in the season. We do often see these smaller fish, and Justin just didn't want to take a fish or a shot on a really small fish. This was the biggest one in the school, and it was maybe 15 pounds, but delicious nonetheless. I'll take these, and you know, realistically a 50-60 pound fish has a lot of meat, and we didn't need a ton, just enough to eat for the week. So my brain and bleed, as always, I talk about that. I get so many questions about that. Go right up under those gills and run it all the way through. You can see how quickly the blood comes pouring out. Never gets old.
What are the odds of the timing of you saying that and them swimming by? What was that, 30 seconds after you said it?
Yeah. Dude, I mean, I could have shot at the Wahoo, but I was like...
Peachy I'm eating that one. That's veal, baby. For what I want to do, that's perfect.
They're really little, huh?
I shot, this was the biggest one. That's why I shot them. They were really small. I got it.
And you'll see I do gut this fish, and I gut it mainly because it's a habit for when I'm on my commercial days, but you'll see when I do gut it, a good amount of blood continues to come out. So I think it is good when it comes to clearing the fillets and treating your fish properly. It definitely does help. You can do it out of the water if it makes you more comfortable.
We're gonna have to go back to the shot. Yeah.
Got that veal wahoo. That was the biggest one.
It was literally the biggest one.
Okay.
For what I want to do though, that's perfect. So not a big one, but it is late in the season, so it's not uncommon to see some smaller ones. And quite honestly, we're not commercial. I don't need a ton, I just need enough to eat. And that is a perfect eater right there. So I even throw a little bit of ice in the belly there. You know how extreme I am about my fish being properly iced and rested, but that's all we need. It's a small one, but it's the perfect size fish for what we're gonna do. We've got some recipes in mind, so we're gonna head in. We'll see you back at the house. Okay, so I lied. I did one more drift. I couldn't help myself. Now they're still looking at me. I didn't have my camera on, just wanted to float around. But now we're actually done. All right, so we have our wahoo completely rested, chilled overnight. You You guys know how meticulous I am on fish resting. Not only do I think it makes the fillets a little more quality, it's a lot easier to handle a cool fish. If you've ever tried to fillet a warm fish, it's a nightmare. But what we're going to do with the Wahoo today, I'm actually only going to be taking the tail sections. We're going to be doing something, it's kind of, actually Will's behind the camera, he can come here and help me with this. There's a dish from Norway called gravlax, and if you've ever been to like a fancy brunch or like one of those fancy all-you-can-eat buffets, a lot of times you'll see gravlax. It's just cured salmon. It's salmon that's kind of dried and a little salty. And Will had the idea. It just popped in your head.
I did it with bluefish on my channel because it's oily enough. And
yeah.
The funny thing is that as lean as Wahoo is, it's still an oily fish.
Yeah.
It's still kind of like a mackerel, so it holds up to the curing. We've done it on the channel before with a Wahoo tail.
Yeah, it's been a while, so we're gonna do it again.
And it was amazing. It was, yeah.
So essentially, you take some salt, some sugar, and a little bit of dill, or brown sugar, right?
Yep.
And a little bit of dill, and you cover these up, and I'm gonna show you more in depth in the kitchen. And you just let them sit and try and almost dry them a little bit, and it brings the moisture out, and they firm, and we put them on bagels for breakfast, and it's incredible. And we're gonna use the tail cuts because, not that the tail cut isn't edible, the tail cuts are still amazing. It's Wahoo, the whole fish is delicious, but if you were to pick a piece that was least desirable, it's going to be the tail because it has more tendons. It's not as tender for like sashimi or poke bowls or cooking or whatever. So we're going to take the tail cuts from these and show you how we do this. And yeah, that's actually perfect. These fish are a bit smaller, so I'm going to go a little farther forward because I wouldn't have had a whole lot of meat had I just taken the back section. So I go through all the way to the backbone, kind of just jump over it just a hair, and then down on the back side.
The one thing we haven't done with the gravlax is that they do a lot of different herbs and beets.
Actually, what I was going to mention is you kind of could just, again, there's no rules in the kitchen. You can do whatever you want.
There's one rule.
There's one rule.
There's one rule. The weight of the fish. You want to do 50-50 salt, sugar, half the weight of the fish.
So I'm going to tell you a secret. I haven't been following that rule since Will was in New York, and I just dumped a bunch of salt and sugar in a bowl. And
hey, whatever works.
I wung it. All right, and I think the first time we did, I know the first time we did it, we actually left the skin on. Last time I did this, I ended up taking the skin off, and not only did it cure a little faster, I feel like it actually took a little bit more of the flavor in. So I'm actually going to take the skin off this time, because you can get, one may be tough. Let me do this one first. You can get all your stuff, your salt, your sugar, your dill on both sides of the fillet instead of just one. So I'll take these off just like so. No big deal if there's a little bloodline on there. Just kind of ride that bloodline straight down and out. Just like so. And that is it. I'm going to take actually the tail section from the other fish as well. But I'm not going to show you that, but look out. I'll finish cleaning these up, and we'll see you in the kitchen. All right, so I've got my cuts. I've got some with skin, some without skin. These guys are so thin, I think they would dry out pretty quickly, but I'm no expert. I've only done this a few times, but we're in love with it, so we eat it all the time. So first thing I do, and you can kind of use whatever you got. I've got a cookie sheet with a grate over it, put some aluminum foil on top of it, poked a bunch of holes in it. And the reason I want holes in it is because we want the moisture to come out of the fish. This fish is going to dry a bit and kind of tense up quite a bit, actually. So you want the moisture to be able to drop down through the aluminum foil there. And before I get crazy, I kind of map this out, make sure I have enough room for the amount of fillets that I'm doing. So we'll start with our mixture. We're just using salt. I use the cheap stuff because we do quite a bit. And so Will says you have to measure this out. He takes there may be a science behind it. I'm just winging it. What he does is he weighs the fish. You take half the weight of the fish. So if the fish weighs a pound, you take 8 ounces of equal parts salt and sugar, if that makes sense. I just kind of eyeball it. And if I don't have enough, I make more. And when I say sugar, I mean brown sugar, sorry. Sugar. And I try and make it half and half. Again, I don't weigh it out, but I do want them to be fairly equal parts. And then I've got 1 bundle of dill, finely minced. And you could definitely get wild with this. You could add different herbs and spices and whatnot. So I try, just to conserve product, I try to align these in a way that I can use the same pile to cover them. So we'll do these 4 together, and then we'll kind of make this all one right here. So make sure fillets are nice and clean. Dry it off, and I just take my salt, brown sugar, and dill. I just want to cover these with a generous layer of our mixture. And for the skin, the pieces with the skin on, I'm doing skin side down, obviously. And I don't see why you couldn't, but I just don't think it would soak through the skin as much. I don't put my mixture on the skin side. Just want to make sure everything's covered. Can't see any open fillet. And by the way, you want to make sure this is something small enough that you can fit it in your fridge. Make sure you have enough room to put it in your fridge. Now, because my fillets are completely exposed, they don't have any skin on them, I am going to do it on both sides. I'm actually curious to see if I can tell a difference in flavor. And you'll notice these, if you check on them in the fridge, the salt and sugar is gonna soak up that moisture. It's gonna get kind of runny, and it's gonna look like it's kind of fading away. But that's what's supposed to happen. As it pulls the moisture out of that fish, it's just gonna kind of turn into like a syrup. All right. All right. Now, last step. You're probably wondering why I have bags of peat rock over here. So when we first started doing this, we used to use actually canned vegetables. What you want is you want some type of weight on top of this to help press that moisture out. And it finally just came to me. I don't know why I don't just fill bags full of peat rock from the yard. So that's what we do. Nothing too heavy, because you don't really, you don't want to put 20 pounds of peat rock on the shelf in your fridge. But you could use peat rock, or you could use sand, just anything to evenly distribute weight out over this fish. That fits perfect. So I'm going to put this in the fridge. Time depends kind of on thickness. Everyone's a little different. On average, we go about probably 48 hours, 2 days, maybe a day and a half, 2 days. So I'm going to check them a day in and see what they look like. We're going to go in the fridge, and I'll see you in a couple days. All right. So we are coming up on 48 hours. I put these in Wednesday afternoon. I can't remember the time, but it is Friday at noon. And morning kind of got away from me. I had to run some errands, but we're gonna have a late breakfast. And something I did forget to do that I normally do is I cover the fish with saran wrap before I put these on, because it's gonna make a huge mess. Not that bad. But normally I cover them in saran wrap. So I'm gonna pull the thinner ones out. I think the longer one, or the thicker ones may, they feel pretty good too. Get these out of the way. So I did peek at them yesterday, and you can pull it early, you can pull it late. You just kind of want them to be how you like them. I like them firm and not, I don't know if you can tell, it's shrunk quite a bit, pretty thin. There we are, that's the one with the skin. I don't know if I want to pull these out yet. These actually feel pretty good too. Oh yeah, those are done too. You can see how much they thinned up. So I'm gonna rinse these off. I'm gonna do everything that I say not to do, and I'm gonna put fresh water on them. And it's okay because they've been cured long enough that the fresh water's not really gonna affect them. All the liquid that comes out, see, it's quite a bit. And again, I can't remember if I said it, thicker pieces go longer, thinner pieces shorter. On average, we do about 48 hours, and that feels right to me. Just watch it. So we're gonna toast our bagels. And this, you could add whatever you want. We do, got a wheat everything bagel, a little bit of red onion, tomato, some capers, and some cream cheese. I'm slicing these guys, just slice them real thin, almost like you would sashimi. It's pretty firm. Oh, I got some skin on that one. If you don't like bloodline, you can cut the bloodline out, and I don't mind it. I kind of like the bloodline flavor. You can see. It's wild. And it is, I don't want to use the word fishy because that scares people away, but it does taste like fish. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's supposed to taste like fish. Salty, a little hint of that dill. If you wanted more dill, you could probably go dill straight to the fillet and then the salt and sugar after. The cream cheese, bit of tomato, a little bit of red onion, and our lox, or grav ono. So my understanding, lox is salmon. So grav ono or grav wahoo. And last, just a little bit. Throw a few capers on there. Doesn't really need salt, but I like pepper. I'm excited. You ready to take a bite?
Well, I'm waiting for you.
Oh, waiting for me.
I have manners, babe.
Really?
Yeah.
That's news to me.
Rude. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, babe.
Grav ono bagel? So I don't know if it's the Wahoo or just everything on the bagel is amazing.
I think it's everything on the basil.
Everything on the basil.
Bagel. So good.
Something about it. Give it a try. Like I said, traditionally it's done with salmon. Will's idea was to do it with Wahoo. He's done it with bluefish. You could probably do it with, shoot, you could do it with African pompano, yellowjack. May even be able to do it with a king mackerel. I'd be curious to try it with other fish and see how they turn out, but it is so good. Gotta try it.
It's salty, which is why I like it.
Yeah, I know. Malin salts are salt.
Whatever.
Kind of hard to eat with one hand. But that is all we've got on this one. Thanks for coming along, as always. If you have any questions, please feel free. Sorry if I have food all over my face. Any questions, feel free, as always, and we'll see you on the next one. Later.